The world seemed to shrink a little in the 1990s. Cable television, mobile phones, email, the World Wide Web. The technology revolution and the dot-com boom were shaking up the way people worked. People around the world were connected like we'd never been before. But in the midst of massive change, the global mantra of deregulation and privatization that started in the 80s just marched on. Deficit hysteria at both federal and provincial level led to spending cuts. CUPE would have to continue its campaign against public service cuts and contracting out, but this time we'd try some new tactics by enlisting the help of the public. Judy Darcy, a library worker and CUPE's secretary-treasurer, took the reins when Jeff Rose retired in 1991, becoming CUPE's fourth national president. While CUPE members had become engaged and activated, Darcy realized it was time to tap into the public. Over the 90s, CUPE learned how to move public opinion and gain widespread support for the public services Canadian families count on.
Hands off public health care. Our health care system is not for sale.
Under Darcy and her successor as Secretary-Treasurer CUPE 951's Geraldine Maguire, we campaigned to strengthen Medicare, create a national child care program, and improve pensions. CUPE's fourth decade was defined by a constant battle against governments cutting budgets, jobs, wages, and rights. In 1995, Federal Finance Minister Paul Martin gutted healthcare transfers, leading to healthcare cuts across the country. From New Brunswick, with the McKenna Liberal government's budget cuts, to BC, with Liberal Premier Gordon Campbell pushing through bills that would strip public service workers of their bargaining rights and cut 28,000 jobs. In Ontario, the Conservative Harris government's full-on assault on workers and public services spurred hundreds of thousands to the streets in 11 cities for the Days of Action. In Winnipeg, City Council rolled back workers' wages, reneging on signed collective agreements.
Where's the integrity? Where's the commitment to your staff?
They're going out after the unions with everything they can illegally muster. It's not right.
Within 5 days of Judy Darcy and Local 500 President Paul Moist launching a campaign, the cuts were reversed. And in Quebec, CUPE leaders were sent to jail for standing up for their workers' rights. Local 301 President and Secretary-Treasurer Jean Lapierre and Denis Ménard were given 6 months after a demonstration opposing a bill that allowed municipalities to cut and freeze wages. Along with budget cuts came increasing attempts by governments to privatize and contract out. CUPE was everywhere by the thousands, leading campaigns, stopping governments. Even Alberta Premier Ralph Klein had to give CUPE credit for helping stop his plans for private hospitals.
What is really critical is that we have a coordinated bargaining strategy, that we stand together, not one local union being picked off or one group of workers being pitted off against another. We really have to reach out and involve our members and talk to them about the issues. And we have to be building alliances in the community. This isn't just a labor fight. This is about jobs and public services and social programs.
All along, CUPE worked closely with the NDP federally, with leaders Audrey McLaughlin and Alexa McDonough, and provincially, despite not always agreeing. CUPE members became more political than ever, helping elect progressive politicians at every level. In the 90s, the threats of privatization and deregulation presented themselves on a new front: globalization. The acronyms were many and everywhere, and all presented the same risk: less control over our public services and our resources. CUPE saw the threats and was a leader in calling for trade agreements that protected the things Canadian families value. Globalization also put the spotlight on another issue that CUPE would be known for: water. Our union exposed the dangers of treating water like any other export and privatizing control of municipal water services. Our message? Water is a public resource that must remain in public hands. Even under the threat of massive public service cuts, CUPE pressed on, growing in numbers and influence. A 5-day province-wide strike in Newfoundland led to better wages and pensions. 12,000 members of the Canadian Union of Education Workers joined. 39,000 members of the HEU in BC voted to become a provincial service division of CUPE. Determined to stay strong, CUPE tripled its organizing budget in 1998. True to our commitment that all workers have a right to a union and a voice, CUPE reached out to underrepresented workers. Young people, workers with disabilities, and Aboriginal, Métis, and Inuit workers. CUPE held our first meeting for our First Nations members and signed historic partnerships supporting Aboriginal employment. Once again, despite a relentless wave of challenges, CUPE members had dug in, pushed ahead, and grown stronger. CUPE entered the new millennium bigger and better than ever.